Aaron Glenn at the end of the day has to show some sort of Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson next year. Otherwise, the seat will get hot.
Hello and welcome to Gangs All Here. My name is Ryan Sampson. We're joined by New York Post columnist Mark Cannizzaro for today's episode of Gangs All Here. It's Monday, December 22nd. The Jets are coming off a brutal loss to the New Orleans Saints down in New Orleans. Mark was one of the few writers that were down there covering the Jets game, and we're here to get his takeaways from yesterday and from Aaron Glenn's presser today, where he had some interesting things to say. But before we get to any of that, Mark, how you feeling today on this Monday holiday Christmas week?
I'm hanging in. Everything's good. Just, it was an early flight this morning from New Orleans. Myself and our gang. I was just on the phone with Costello a minute ago. It said the gang's not all here if you're not here, but he's taking the day off today, I guess. So,
Yeah, look, I really wanted to speak to you today because I thought you asked a brilliant question that Aaron Glenn had to answer for. And I want to toss the sound here first, hear his answer. You asked Aaron Glenn, what can Jets fans take from him and his messaging for the rest of this season and how everything is going right now? Here's what Aaron Glenn had to say.
Yeah, that's a good question. And to me, I will continue to say, just don't let go of the rope because there is a plan, there is a vision. From day one, we've been trying to set the foundation of what we want this team to be. And a lot of that is from in-house perspective for the most part. You still have a number of things that you have to go through as far as, making sure that everybody understands exactly what you're trying to accomplish what type of team do you want to be. And our guys know that. They do. But listen, we have to continue to work on that. Between me and Moose, we got to continue to, players that we want. That whole deal is something that we continue to look at. And for the fans, listen, it's going to be a tough road, and we knew that. But, man, the thing is, we know exactly what we're doing, and we do have a plan. And just don't let go of the rope. I would say that.
I'm barely hanging on here, Mark, with Aaron Glenn this season. I know for myself as a younger fan, this is the worst I think I've ever seen it. I think this is worse even than 2020 when they were tanking. They're purposely tanking now by playing Brady Cook, in my opinion. But really, I think it's good that you asked that question because things can get lost in the slog of a season, right, Mark, where, a team, as they're struggling and being 3-12, they're not winning many games, and the messaging still has to be there for the future. I want to get your thoughts on Aaron Glenn's response there when you did ask him that question.
Well, I mean, it's clear that he is weeding out the players he doesn't want and trying to bring players he wants, bring in players he wants. The trades earlier in the year, Quinn Williams and Sauce, clearly they were commodities the Jets had. They've got the draft capital now. They've got to do something with it. Um, I mean, listen, Aaron has he's had a number of slip ups this year. On the field, certainly, we can go back look back to the Denver game. I mean, coaching lost that game for them that day. No, there's no question in my mind. They threw that away with poor coaching decisions. But those are things that are going to happen for a rookie head coach. But he made it. Listen, he made a poor decision in bringing in Steve Wilkes. I mean, who we just fired last week. Steve Wilkes was, a one and done coach. And I think I wrote last week, I think it was 15 out of the 20 jobs he's had. He was there for 1 year. I mean, that's a red flag. I'm not saying that's a bad person, but, he obviously wasn't doing a good enough job in those places. You know, Early on in his career, in fairness, he's trying to move up the ladder. Okay, you're working one and dones to try to get to the bigger place. But, his last 5 or 6 spots were, jobs poorly done. Um, and I understand why Aaron brought him here. He was the one guy on the staff that had head coaching experience, albeit kind of scant head coaching experience, but he had it. So that was a poor decision. It was obviously we've seen that the Justin Fields decision was not a sound decision on the part of Aaron, and Darren Muji, and the fact that they didn't make Justin Fields compete for the job in training camp was curious to all of us who watched and had seen his previous stops in his career. Yeah, and the way he protected Fields is was odd, throughout the year too. He was really kind of, had kid gloves on him for some reason. And I'm not saying he has to be, a tyrant, but I really feel like he protected him. And, I mean, now we've got a Justin Fields who's pretty much checked out, and I mean, there's a reason why Brady Cook is playing because Justin Fields doesn't want to be on the field.
No,
And the Jets want to see, hey, maybe Brady Quinn can be a backup, next year. That's really all that they're doing at this point. But yeah, listen, I mean, he's going to hold on to that plan, a lot of which he doesn't share with us. I mean, he has a tendency to do these things. He did, and I listen. All this being said, I've been on the record in my columns liking the hire of Aaron. I covered his entire career as a player. I've got a lot of respect for him. Um, you know, you can't quit on a guy after 1 year, even though it's been a rocky one. Let's be honest. But you know what Aaron does a lot, and he did it even last night in the press conference yesterday afternoon in New Orleans. He'll say something like yesterday he talked about there are three things I talked to the guys about. Two of them I'm not going to tell you, but one of them was they played with a great effort. Well, I mean, so he'll never really tell us what the actual plan is, but he's talking about the plan. And that's kind of where the question I asked that, getting around to that is the fans are being sold this plan, but they don't really know what it is, and it's hard at 3-12 to have a lot of there's not a lot of hang on, not a lot to hang on to. You look at that locker room, there's a lot of talent in there. I mean, Brees Hall is overrated, and he's probably their best, offensive weapon in that room. Listen, Garrett Wilson is the best weapon in that room, but obviously he's been hurt.
he's their leading
So
receiver and it's he hasn't
yeah,
played in
he's
weeks.
played 7 games and he leads the team in receiving yards. I mean, it's staggering.
This
It's just like,
this team is
you know,
so, but that's where I get hung up on, because I listen to his words as a fan, right? I should pay attention to what Aaron Glenn, when he does want to speak and does want to give information out and doesn't want to reveal everything, but when he does, he says we're building a foundation. How am I supposed to believe that you're building a foundation when you fired your defensive coordinator in his first year? How is that building a good foundation? And on
well,
top
I'm
of,
not, I'm not going to argue with that. I actually give him credit for admitting he made a mistake there. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay with that, but go find a better one now, right? So, um,
it, it
I'm not gonna kill him for that because he at least he admitted he made a mistake. It wasn't a good fit. So move on. And honestly, the games that had preceded, Wilkes's firing, I mean, you just couldn't you can't stand on that. I mean, a change had to be made. But now I understand what you're saying. What is the I'm like, what's the personnel foundation there? Okay, I mean, their offensive line, they've got some pieces on that offensive line. I was just talking to Kaz, last night over dinner. Are we overrating Olu and listen, to Membu, this is his first year, so let's tap the brakes on that. But he's done a pretty good job, I think, as a rookie coming in here. But I mean, that offensive line was pathetic yesterday. They weren't picking up blitzes.
no,
I mean, eight sacks, 57 yards in losses. And listen, again, it's not all on that. I mean,
no, you got
Brady Cook was holding the ball way too
way
long.
too
So,
long, and his pocket
and he wasn't
presence.
recognizing
Yeah,
blitzes. Yeah.
yeah.
So there was a lot of elements. But in theory, they have at least a decent offensive line to build on. Hopefully, I'm thinking maybe they re-sign Vera Tucker, maybe on a 1 year next year. Even though he gets hurt every year, he's a quality individual. He's a really good player when he's playing. But I mean, okay, you got Garrett Wilson, and then you have nobody else. I mean, you've got pedestrian receivers after that, right? They don't have a proper number two, certainly. I mean, these, Mechie um,
And Mitchell.
and AD. I mean, those guys are third or fourth receivers. It's just, I don't know. The defense to me has been probably more disappointing than anything. There's, on that group, I thought they had a pretty good unit. And again, you got to throw them a little bit of a bone. They're playing a bunch of rookies in the secondary. There's been a lot of injuries. Obviously, they traded Sauce, but there's just not. I mean, you look through that locker room and it's just like, who are the go-to guys there? There's not a lot of go-to guys. So they got, Aaron, he talked about him and Mooj. Me and Mooj, we gotta get players in here. And they've got, obviously, we know they got the two first round picks this year. They've got a lot of draft capital. Obviously, three first rounders next year. Um, I am fascinated to see if the Giants end up with that number one pick, which they're in line for right now, obviously. And I'm actually going to Vegas this weekend to cover them against the Raiders, and that's going to be the number one draft. That's going to be the Mendoza Bowl, basically. Although the
Yep.
Giants don't need Mendoza,
Yep.
so the Jets have got to pray that the Giants, lose that game and get the number one pick, because then they're perfect trade partners. Because the Giants, in theory, don't need a quarterback, and the Jets have got the draft capital, and the Giants have got a lot of holes to fill too. So that
Correct.
really is a very, very that's a good marriage right there, in terms of a trade
Yeah,
situation.
listen, Mark. Jets fans are already lining up their rooting interests. They've been looking at the schedule ahead now for weeks, circling this Raiders Giants game. I know I have myself, because the Raiders do need a quarterback, and they're gonna, if they do end up with that number one pick, and the Giants, let's say, win that game, then the Jets have very very little chance of getting up to number one. Unless the
Yeah.
Raiders can pull off a victory against the Chiefs, who, again, lost to the Titans yesterday. You have no idea how that could play in the last week of the season, too. But, yeah, this weekend's very important in terms of Jets fans' rooting interest, because that's my ultimate question here, Mark, is the quarterback. The quarterback, the quarterback. Aaron Glenn cannot get this situation right. He could try and put as many pieces on this team and insert as much talent as much, from free agency or through the draft. But no matter what, if they don't get the quarterback decision right in the draft, Mark, they're going to be stuck in this middle ground / bottom of the league where they never get themselves back into the playoffs and get
Well,
themselves into
it's where
playing.
it's where they've been resided for a decade and a half now,
Yeah,
because of they didn't, I mean, now we're seeing Sam Darnold's a winning quarterback, which is, one of the biggest shocks. But, they didn't develop him right. Zach Wilson was an absolute, I mean, he can't even get on the field with the Dolphins, who stink. Um, yeah, they can't do that again, but you got to keep swinging. You got to
yeah.
go, if they can get Mendoza and they really think he, is the guy, you got to get it. You know, I don't want to be an apologist for Glenn, and this is something that Kaz and I were talking about again over dinner last night. It's like, yeah, he made a bad choice in moving his chips, forward for Justin Fields, but there weren't a lot of attractive options out there. I mean, obviously, we already know now that Russell Wilson wouldn't have been any good, because he wasn't good with the Giants. Um, you know, would Mariota made it? I mean,
Mariota, Jacoby Brissett,
yeah,
Mac
I mean, those guys
Jones, all of
they're
those
all
guys.
retreads.
Right,
They're
but
all
they're all retreads.
retreads.
But I would argue, and this is where if Tanner Angstrand's running the Lions offense that Ben Johnson runs, you need a quarterback that is good in play action, is going to be a little bit more of a statue in the pocket, and make reads on time. All of those traits are not good for Justin Fields. He
Yeah,
never
that's absolutely
succeeded.
fair.
He never succeeded in that type of offense. So it was really a square peg in a round hole, it felt like, when you chose Justin Fields to be the guy you were going to pick for your first year as head coach for this quarterback
Yeah.
situation, you
Justin
know?
Fields was never a good passer, and that's not a good trait for a quarterback if you can't pass very well. So that wasn't a good good from the start. Where do they go from here, veteran wise? I mean, there's no
Kirk
way that
Cousins.
Atlanta's not going to let Cousins go, because their young kid's not going to be back in time for the start of next year. I mean that's not going to happen. I think Mariota's still under contract, if I'm not mistaken. So I just don't. I mean, it really is. It's grim, right now.
So
I
if
mean,
you're
Jacoby Brissett's been given 25 different opportunities, and I know he's a quality guy, because he happens to be a real favorite of Bill Parcells, who I have mad respect for, and Bill swears by him. But I mean, he's been given opportunity after opportunity, and he hasn't seized it. And they're really, it's at this point you really have to, unless you just see some really, really significant red flags on Mendoza, if you have a chance to get him, I think you got to just go for it. But listen, we all overrate these quarterbacks once the draft, arrives, and and it's going to happen again this year. There's going to be another quarterback or two that are leaving college. They haven't all decided to go back yet. There's still a few guys out there, but um, that we're going to overrate them, and they're going to be like, oh, they're going to go. This guy's going to go right after Mendoza or whatever. There's always something. So yeah, it's just a very, very difficult spot. They have to get it right. If they don't get it right, then Aaron Glenn's going to be fired in another year or two. It's just the way it's going to be, and the cycle will go on.
Cycle will go on. Yeah. So listen, there's two parts there, right? So you talk about um this situation with Mendoza. Would you be all in favor of if the Jets identify him as their guy? Doesn't matter what the draft capital is, you got to go up to one as long as it's the Giants, not the Raiders, and you can get your guy as Mendoza. You would be all for that.
As long as they believe it. So I'm not smart enough to know how good this kid is. I mean, you know, him and Indiana have had this magical year out of nowhere, basically, right? And it's is did they just catch fire? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I never profess to be an expert, but if those guys in that building, Muji, AG, Angstrand, the scouts, if they believe in Mendoza the way that Ernie Accorsi believed in Eli Manning, for example, then you got to give up whatever the hell you got to give to get him. That's my opinion. I mean, you just have to go that way if that's what you believe. Um, I just, again, as Jet fans are all so emotionally scarred because they've gotten it wrong so many times. So that's where we stand right now. You just have to hope they get it right this time. And I mean, listen, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into place for the Jets to have an opportunity to even draft Mendoza or consider drafting him. And the first of that is to make sure the Raiders don't have that first pick because
Completely
they need a
agree.
quarterback just as badly as the Jets do.
Yeah, and then obviously a lot of it hinges on if Dante Moore comes out. He's another highly regarded prospect. If he does come out, then the Jets could have a chance at either one of those two potentially. And then, well, who knows what happens with Cleveland, which is a big mess right now in the quarterback room with Shador,
Yeah.
Gabriel, Deshaun Watson's apparently coming back next year from his second Achilles injury. Who knows what happens in that quarterback room next year for Cleveland, and if they do want to take another quarterback. Mark, my final question for you is if Aaron Glenn gets his quarterback and the rookie drafts a rookie quarterback this year, and it's not a good year again next year. I mean, it feels like the seat is already hot right now from the fans' perspective, but how much patience will Woody Johnson have for Aaron Glenn next year? Because I see a lot of fans canceling their season tickets. I again have never seen it this bad in terms of the perspective and narrative around this team where the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, I would say even longer, these fans are just checked out and they don't want to watch this product anymore.
Oh, you
Reporters
just look
don't
at the
even want to
building.
go to the game anymore. So
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about it maybe the last time you and I chatted. I've never seen as sparse a crowd as we've had in the last couple of. I think the Atlanta game was the particular one that was just like, I mean, back when I was covering the Jets back years ago, they used to have the NFL would require them to announce these tickets sold and the actual attendance. And I do remember like in the Rich Kotite years, like 95, 96. Um, I mean, there were like 50,000 no-shows, and that's where they were against Atlanta a couple weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, I want to say, and it wasn't that much better last week, and it ain't going to get much better this week, although you may have some New England people come in, right? So, um, yeah, it's listen, Woody Johnson is. I don't want to praise him for being so patient this year because it's only one year. But I do know that Woody desperately wants Aaron to work out. This was his handpicked guy. Remember, Robert Saleh was not his handpicked guy. That was his brother's handpicked guy, right? So there's more into this for Woody, and I think Woody understands he needs to be patient and let his football people do football. And I here's the complication. Say they draft Mendoza
mhm,
or whomever else they might draft. We all know you don't really want to start the rookie right away.
no.
Although the Giants essentially did that with Dart this year, and obviously he got hurt. He's banged up a little bit,
Well, I mean, they let
and
him sit behind Russell Wilson for the first
they
four
did.
games.
Yes, yeah, but that's kind of what the Jets are going to need to do next year because they can't afford to have a guy sit for an entire year after you've gone, three and whatever, if it's going to be 3-13 or whatever the number is going to be at the end of this couple of weeks. You have to show improvement. I mean, that's something the Giants have not been doing. That's why Brian Daboll got fired. I mean, I thought Brian Daboll and Dart was going to be a really good fit. And I've been on record as being a Daboll supporter. I still think he's a good head coach, but when you're 2-8 for the third straight year, you just can't sell that to the fans anymore, and that's why John Mara had to let him go. And we're going to get to that point with Woody and Aaron if there is an improvement, if there's not improvement shown next year. So I mean that's where we're at. I don't call the seat hot. I know there was one report, Mike Florio said that this could be a one and
Yeah,
done.
I don't believe that.
I think that was almost irresponsible throwing spaghetti against a wall, in my opinion. It didn't seem just not the way the Jets people are thinking, around Woody or Woody himself. Yeah, listen, Woody, this is Woody's guy, Aaron Glenn, and if anybody thinks he's going to fire him after 1 year, that's thoroughly irresponsible on any owner's part. If you're hiring a guy and you fire him after 1 year, why'd you hire him in the first place? I mean, it's ridiculous. So, but I will say that, if we're talking hot seat, if the Jets are, whoever the hell is quarterback in them next year, whether it's Mendoza or retread veteran, whatever, if they start 1-8, 0-7, or whatever the number is next year, then the seat will get hot because improvement has to be shown. And, you know, that's going to be a big part of bringing more talent in this year in the offseason, this coming offseason, the draft, using your draft capital. Um, I think the only thing at this point, Ryan, that's going to excite Jet fans is the Jets somehow getting that first overall pick and picking Mendoza. Because right now they don't have a lot to hold on to. I mean, that rope that Aaron was talking about is very frayed after 1 year, and it's sad that it's been only 1 year and it's that frayed. But that's where we're at right now. There's just not a lot to grab a hold of. And going back to my question to Aaron earlier today, you know, I asked him what his message was to those fans because those fans are not showing up at the games. As you just mentioned, they're canceling their season tickets, and that's bad for business, and that gets the owner's attention, but more than anything. And Aaron understands that, but he's been operating this year as if he's on a 5-year plan, and there's just no such thing as a 5-year plan in this league anymore. I mean, look what Ben Johnson's done in Chicago and Liam Cohen's done in Jacksonville. I mean, those teams stunk, but the difference is they didn't have like superstar quarterbacks, but both good young quarterbacks.
Yep.
And Trevor Lawrence is playing, a decently above average. He's not one of
Yes.
the top 5 or 10 quarterbacks in the league, but so that just shows you how good of a coach Cohen is, right? And Ben Johnson, what he's doing in Chicago. I mean, that was rudderless for years, when Justin Fields was there and whatnot. So, you know, Aaron Glenn at the end of the day has to show some sort of Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson next year. Otherwise, the seat will get hot.
Yeah, and look, the Jets are the best organization, in my opinion, in all of sports at selling hope to its fans. We got draft picks. We're going to get the number one pick. We're going to get the quarterback. It's right there. We have a plan. We have a plan, fans. But it's like we've seen this dog and pony show before. It's time for you to actually put words to execution. Go be aggressive after that number one pick, and don't let it wait until the draft night or let another team get up to the number one pick if it is the Raiders who don't have the number one pick. Like, the Jets have to be aggressive if they want to really address this quarterback situation, Mark, because I completely agree with you. The difference between Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen is they have quarterbacks that are young and fun and talented, and the Jets don't have that, and they haven't had that in a very long time. So if they could find that solution this offseason or somewhat address that situation, it'll give a little bit of hope, hopefully for Aaron Glenn and Tanner Engstrand and company to make something that is a foundation for the future. But that's a big if, and we still have to see how they get there. And believe it or not, there's still 2 more weeks of this season left to go before the Jets get finally to the offseason where the real fun begins for Jets fans. Mark, I appreciate you as always for hopping on here, giving us some of your precious time and your analysis as always. And we're looking forward to talking to you next time, all right?
Sounds good, Ryan. I'll talk to you later, man.